Hey guys, it's Joe Madden here. I'm joined today by Dave Cokin. We are going to talk AAC conference preview. So Dave, let's jump right into it. Central Florida, can they improve their defense?
That's I guess that's the big question every year with this team because we know the offense is going to be very prolific. They've got uh, what I'll call a borderline top 25 college quarterback. He might even be better than that. Uh, there's no worries on the offense. The offensive line looks really strong. This is going to be a good football team when they have the football. The questions, you look at the linebacker and you look at the defensive backfield positions, and there's still big question marks. And unless some guys improve or their new personnel is better than their old personnel, it's probably going to be the same story for UCF, which means they'll have trouble catching Cincinnati in this conference. They'll be real good. They'll be a bowl team, but they won't be conference winners.
Now, looking at Cincinnati, how much better are they than the rest of the league? Because they went undefeated in regular season last year. What are your hopes for them this year?
I think they're a full touchdown better than Central Florida, and Central Florida is the second best team in the league, which tells you that from that point on, yeah, it's Cincinnati can name the score in most of these games. So what the Bearcats, their primary issue might be motivation on a weekly basis because they know they're better than all these teams. The motivation, however, is to get to the Final Four. And they've got to win all their games. They've got to win them impressively to do that. And that probably still won't be enough. But I think they're going to be playing with a chip on their shoulder. I think the way they lost their bowl game to Georgia last year is going to keep this team very focused because, they'd be in better position to be making a playoff argument had they held on and won that football game, which they didn't after dominating it for much of the contest. But this is still clearly the best team in this conference, and it would be a pretty big upset if they don't win.
Absolutely. I'm hoping to see them win for sure. Let's move on to East Carolina. Now, some would say they're soft in the trenches, but they've got a solid quarterback. What are your thoughts on them?
Yeah, they're going to get some points, I guess, but the offensive line doesn't look very good. The wide receiver position remains to be seen how good they'll be, and the defensive line isn't any good. And you hit the key word, Joe, the trenches. They look college football, and I know we talked about this on the previous video we did, and I mentioned it all the time. Games are won and lost in the trenches, and East Carolina is weak on both sides of the ball. So they're going to be a bad football team again. I don't see much chance of a winning season for them.
Okay, moving on to Houston. Some would say they've got an easy schedule here. What do you think of their quarterback, Clayton Tune? Can he sing a tune this season?
That's going to be the key because Houston has some real strengths. They've got one of the best wide receiving cores in the country. It's loaded at the skill positions. But Clayton Tune is a guy who makes mistakes. He's got to manage the game better than he has. Now, experience at the position should help him. I don't think he's going to be a stud by any means, but if he can avoid mistakes and turnovers, Houston's got a chance to make some noise in this conference this year. The problem that I have is I'm just not sure that that's going to be the case, and I probably have Houston lower than most people when we break down the conference race later on at the end of this video. You'll see that I don't have Houston as high as I think most people do.
Talking about a team that I don't have as high, Memphis. I'm not a believer in this team. What are your thoughts on their 7-back defense? Do you think they're going to be able to make something this season?
The defense will still be a question, but I actually like their offense. I think Gunnell is going to be stepped right in. I think it's going to be a seamless transition. I think this guy is going to be a star quarterback. And in fact, as he gains experience, might be better than his predecessor. So I'm pretty high on Memphis. I think they're going to be in the upper half of this division, maybe the third best team in the league. The defense, like a lot of Conference USA teams, the defense isn't very good. But if their offense is prolific, as I think it's going to be, it won't matter in most games.
Okay, well, I'm going to take your word on Memphis then. Moving on to Navy. How are you looking at Navy this season? Now, do you think they can do better than last season? I know they had a hard one.
I don't think they can. And the problem for Navy this year, maybe more so, look, Navy's the service academies as a rule are not as experienced because, there's no redshirting and stuff like that. They're not as experienced as teams on a regular basis. But this year it's going to be worse because you're looking at Navy having, I think the breakdown is like 3 returning starters on offense, 8 on defense. Now, that would be acceptable in most years. But this season, with almost everybody returning who played college football last season, I think Navy's between a rock and a hard place. I think they're going to really struggle. Don't know if they'll be the worst team in the conference, but they're certainly going to be in the bottom 3.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd totally put them in that bottom 3 as well. Moving on to Southern Florida. They seem to be in a rebuild mode. Do you think they're going to be able to build a team that can make a statement this season?
Not this season. Look, they're in about as rich a recruiting area as you want. And not everybody who's good down there goes to Florida or Alabama or Georgia or UCF. South Florida's still got plenty of bodies to pick from. Some good, talented football players. These last couple of regimes have not done a good job of that. And they're going to pay for it again this year and probably next year. But there's no reason they can't be a representative program down the road. Again, they should be able to get some good players. But right now, they just don't have any. They're average or below average at virtually every position. And that's going to make for a long season for the Bulls.
Absolutely, it will. So looking at SMU, they've got a new coordinator in there. I think this is one of the solidest teams on the board. What are you liking from them, and what are you seeing from them?
Yeah, look, I'm high on their quarterback. I don't think he's going to be all conference, but I think Mordecai could be maybe the 4th best quarterback in the league. And in the SMU offense, it might take him a little while to get acclimated and be able to deliver the results that were out there last year. But there's no reason that by the middle of the season, SMU won't be rolling on offense once again. And they've got some areas that have to be concerned, but one area where they're really strong is offensive line. And that's going to help the transition to the new quarterback. So I think SMU is still going to be a good team. Not quite at the level of the teams I have at the top of the conference, but certainly good enough to be back in a bowl game. And if they get underrated early, they might be a team that's able to cover some spreads before the odds catch up with them. That remains to be seen as far as the numbers and where they're posted. But I think SMU is a team I've got my eye on.
Okay, I like it. Now moving on to Temple. They seem to have issues galore. Can they have a worse season than they did last year?
Worse is relative. They're going to be bad again. And look, the problem for them is the skill positions just aren't any good. And in today's college football, you got to have people who can throw the ball and run the ball, and they just don't seem to have them. So I don't know where Temple's offense is going to come from. Some of their scores last year were actually misleading. They were even worse than the scores indicated. This has a good chance to be the worst team in the conference. I don't see much hope for Temple this year.
Okay, either do I. Let's move on to Tulane. They seem to be mid of the pack. Any big expectations from them?
I think they'll be okay. I think they're very well coached. They run their system, and they're obviously used to running that system. They've got some areas of strength. They've got good receivers. They've got an excellent linebacking core, which should help them. I don't think they're good enough to contend with the top teams, but I'll tell you what, anybody who overlooks Tulane on their schedule, they're going to be ripe to get knocked off. Again, this team is extremely well coached, and he'll get the maximum out of his talent. I think that's probably middle of the pack, but it might also be good enough to get them to another bowl game.
Okay, let's hope they do get to another ball game. Then let's look at Tulsa. So Tulsa has new quarterback coming in. They've got some great receivers. Comeback kids. Are you expecting a lot from them?
I think they're probably going to take a step backwards this year. Part of the reason I say that, they're not a bad football team, but if you look back at what took place last year with the Golden Hurricane, they pulled out some miracles. They had some unbelievable comebacks in games where it looked like they had no chance to win. And you generally don't see that 2 years in a row. So I think Tulsa's probably a team that's going to take a little bit of a step backwards this year. They'll still be a representative team, but I think 500 probably maybe a game over 500 about the ceiling for them.
So, Dave, we've gone over all the teams. Who do you see leading this pack?
Well, I think Cincinnati's an easy winner in the conference. And I think Central Florida's clearly the second best team in the conference. The team I like that most people aren't as high on, or at least what I'm reading from a lot of people is that they don't seem to be as high on them, is Memphis. I think the Tigers are going to be the third best team in this conference. And on any given Saturday, they'll be good enough to beat anybody. So even if Cincinnati's going to have to watch out for this team. A lot of that depends on the quarterback who's stepping in. But again, I think he's got a chance to be a real good one. So I like the Tigers to grab that third spot. After that, it's kind of a crapshoot until you get to the bottom three, which look to be really secure. Navy, South Florida, and Temple, certainly the three worst teams in the conference. So the middle of the pack should be a lot of fun. East Carolina, maybe the dark horse to maybe move up a little bit, but I've still got them as the worst of the best or the worst of the rest, except for the three really bad teams. But the bottom line is it's the Bearcats League. They should win every game they play in this conference, and they should win them fairly impressively with that great defense they have. They'll be a good team, not only straight up, but I suspect against the spread as well.
Okay, Dave, I love it. You guys heard it here. Thank you so much for the show today. Have a wonderful afternoon.